Thank you guys for joining in. This is the 26th touchline. The World Cup for 2026 tees off in about 79 days. If you're trying to get up to speed with anything that's going to go on in the World Cup this upcoming summer, this is the place to watch or listen. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, this is the place to be. We're going to have different coaches, soccer personnel across the U.S. We're going to have as many people as we can out here over the next few episodes between now and when the World Cup tees off in June. Today, we are joined with RSU head coach and former Norwich City U21 player Jake Simpson. Jake, I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So, World Cup, obviously, is the center of the topic today. You being from England, do you have any any big stories or things that you remember growing up that just catch your eye or anything like that?
So I'd say the World Cup and just in general, the England national soccer team in England is very similar to, I'd almost call it a religion in England. I mean, soccer is everyone's main enjoyment. Their weekends, their weeks revolve around it. So when England get together and play and you kind of unite the country, it's always a massive occasion throughout England. I mean, there's holidays for certain things. There's just all kinds of delirium when the national team play, especially in the World Cup, because obviously that's the biggest it's the biggest trophy you can win in the game of soccer.
And it only comes around once every 4 years. It's not like, oh, we'll try again next
once every 4 years.
You're lucky you play in it maybe 3 times.
It's prestigious. It's for a pro soccer player as well, it's the pinnacle of their career. They're waiting every 4 years as well to be able to compete in it. Some people might miss it just because of age. They might hit their peak at 28. It doesn't happen until they're 32. They miss out because they weren't at their peak when they needed to be for a World Cup. So there's all kinds of jeopardy in it, but it is without a doubt, I think, the biggest sporting event in the world, and in England it's the biggest sporting event. I mean, people look forward to it for 4 years, and they get together and there's massive occasions. They sell out stadiums watching games and stuff like that. The pubs and everything are absolutely delirious, so it's a massive occasion for sure.
And the age isn't the only thing that can factor into it. Nationality as well. Like we've had players like Gareth Bale, amazing player at the club level, but internationally he's played in the World Cup once, and that was in 2022 when Wales made it for the first time.
Yeah, and like you say, it's a great opportunity for certain players. Obviously, you can't pick what your nationality is, but you see some of the biggest players in the world, like Gareth Bale's a great example, who play for a nation that you would say are maybe minnows across the world in terms of size, in terms of just soccer in general, population and things like that. So like you say, for a Gareth Bale, you have to meet the prerequisites to even qualify. So you're going to miss out on seeing some of the best players just purely because their nationality and their country isn't quite big enough to push and make it.
Now, we talk about the prerequisites. One of those things being you have to qualify in your regional area based on where your country is. This year it's a little different. They're taking more teams in this year than they normally do. They have the play-in tournaments. There's a few different UEFA ones, and then there's a few different intercontinentals as well. What is your take on that as a coach now that there's not more spots, but there's a little bit extra you can do to make that spot in the World Cup?
I'm kind of torn on it. As a coach, I enjoy seeing different nationalities represented. And a lot of people might look down on certain nations, but there's certain nations that show up at the World Cup and just capture the hearts of everybody with the way they act. You get to see different cultures, which I think is really good. I do think, though, sometimes it would allow a team that maybe shouldn't be there to be there. And I think, just for me personally, like when I look at the England all-time goal-scoring record, there's a lot of debate in terms of, well, someone like Alan Shearer or Gary Lineker was playing against teams that were a much higher echelon. Then, like, he's my favourite player, but Harry Kane, I think he's going to just blow the record away. But he scored a hat-trick in the last World Cup against Panama.
Right.
Should Panama be there? Now they're going to let even more teams in that may be great, but maybe at the level of Panama. So I think it affects potentially individual records in a negative light. But more competition, more chances to play, more dreams realised for certain people. I think overall it's good. More teams, that means more games, which is good for me because you get to watch more soccer. So.
And then what about the competitive side of that? Because obviously there's a little more work to do for some teams than others. There are debates in certain tournaments in America, like March Madness, for example. You have the teams that make it, and then you have your last four in. They have to play an extra game to qualify. Now you're seeing that in the World Cup. As a coach, if you saw that at the level for the NCAA Division II, how would that make you feel in that aspect?
You kind of do see it. I mean, obviously this year with RSU, we got in without having to play an extra game, but in 2024, we had to travel all the way down to Michigan and play another team from Oklahoma in Michigan to play the team in Michigan, which was just wild.
That was like a day later, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're 2 hours away from Southern Nazarene, and we had to go all the way to Michigan to play Southern Nazarene, who had already played twice in the year.
And that's a regular opponent for you too.
Oh yeah, they're down the road. They could have made us meet at a neutral site an hour away and not had us all fly to Michigan and have to fly back. So I think for me as a coach, again, if I'm one of the teams that's already in, then it doesn't really bother me. If I'm one of the teams that isn't in and I have another opportunity, I think it's a great idea because I have an opportunity to get there. And soccer's such an interesting sport because it's one of very few sports that I think you can be a lot worse than the other team and get a result and still win because it's just jeopardy. And if you put enough people behind the ball, sometimes a lucky bounce, things can happen. So I think more opportunity is good. I think the opportunity to play in if I'm a coach of one of those teams is awesome because we get another opportunity where regularly we might not. So I see pros and cons to all of it, but ultimately the World Cup in general is a massive pro. So however many teams there are, I think it's awesome.
Got you. Now, looking back at it as a coach again for a little bit, you talked about travel a little bit. Obviously, you had to travel all the way to Michigan to play another team from Oklahoma last year. This year with the World Cup, it's a little different. Usually it's hosted in one country. We saw in 2022 it was Qatar. In 2018 it was Russia. In 2014 it was Brazil. In 2010, South Africa. This year it's between three different countries that they're all adjoined next to each other, but it's not exactly the same as like, England, France, and Germany are a few hours away from each other. You take a trip from Houston to Dallas, that's a 3-4 hour drive right there. And that's something we're going to see a lot of this year from a lot of these teams just in the U.S. as a whole. We're also going to see teams travel up to Canada or down to Mexico at times as well. Do you think that's going to have an impact on how certain teams perform? Yeah,
I think travel in general. Now, these guys in the World Cup, they're not traveling on minibuses. They're gonna be looked after as best they can. They're gonna have the best physios.
Little bit different from the average commercial bus.
Yeah. Do I think it's gonna impact them? Sure. Different time zones always throw people off, especially so. I do the flight from England to America fairly regularly, so it's going to take them a little while to adjust to being on American time. Then they're going to have to maybe go from an Eastern time to a Central time.
It's 4 time zones right there.
To a West Coast time. All of that will throw you, no matter how well you're looked after, it throws you a little bit, just your body clock. I also think there's going to be a massive advantage based on the weather within the travel for South American teams and America in general. I can speak from experience. The weather in America is unlike Europe. I mean, it's going to take, at least a week or so to even try and get acclimatized. It's a different type of heat. If they're playing in these stadiums, I know England's first game's in Dallas. Dallas in the summer is very hot.
And so, you will have the indoor stadium there at that particular point, but that's not the case around and everywhere in the U.S.
Even the humidity is a massive issue. We're not used to, and by we I mean Europeans, are not used to that level of humidity or heat. And I think a team like Brazil or Argentina or Mexico or the US, and I guess Canada would have, I think, a very decent advantage just body-wise and acclimatization-wise to where I'd be shocked if a South American team didn't win it. But I do think the travel, I think the locations and all that different stuff is going to play a massive part in recovery, in mentally, in physically, and I think you'll see that certainly in the early stage group games for sure.
And then you even just looking at, even if you're staying in the U.S., you go from, say, Dallas to California to maybe New York. That's, off the top of my head, that's 7 or 8 hours of flight right there. That's a long distance bus ride for most teams here in the States, but that's another thing that's going to contribute into it a little bit, because you've got, just off the top of my head, once you get into the elimination rounds, a few days maybe to be at the next place you need to be and get ready. Yeah,
and I think we travel a lot in the college game, and I know staying in hotels, staying in different places, just on sleep and stuff like that, it's uncomfortable. Like, you want to be in somewhere where you're comfortable. You want to be in somewhere where you're like, okay, I know, like, this is my own bed sort of thing. And I know when England have done well in tournaments, they've had what they've called like a base camp. So they'll leave the base camp to go and play a game, but between games they will return to said base camp where they will they'll be very, very familiar with things there. And I just feel like with the travel, if it's in one place, you may be more likely to have a pretty solid base camp. But if you're going from USA to Mexico to Canada, it doesn't make sense to spend all that money going back to a base camp in the US.
Right, like if it was Rogers State, you can't exactly keep the boys in Claremore for that long.
So you're going to
end up, a game in Canada tomorrow.
That's right. You're going to end up probably uncomfortable, probably sleeping in a lot of different beds, trying to get comfortable in these. And like I say, they're not going to be staying in a motel, but still.
Right. It's always nice to be like, I'm back at home. I'm where I'm familiar with.
It's tough. And a lot of these pros like stability, and they like plans, and they like things being the same. With
routine.
Their whole life, they're in a routine of, I wake up here, I train here, I do this, I do that. And this is going to break a lot of routines in terms of times and in terms of travel. So it's going to be a very tough tournament, I think, for teams outside of US, Canada, and Mexico for sure.
Do you think there's any other things with this World Cup that are going to give any sides any advantages, be it tactics or level of opponents that they typically deal with, anything like that? Because you can make the argument there, countries in Europe, they're more used to playing other countries in Europe where, you know, soccer's taken a little bit more serious. Even same thing can be said in South America. Like, looking at the United States, they play in CONCACAF for their region. You've got Canada and Mexico there. That's probably the best in-region competition you're going to get. And you can schedule friendlies all day like there's no tomorrow. But as far as the actual regional play goes, those are the three best teams you're probably going to see consistently. And then maybe Panama or Costa Rica every now and then. And then this year for the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, they didn't have to qualify.
Yeah.
They're in, so there's been a debate there in the U.S. Do you play less games? Do you play more games? Do you try to keep your big-time players who are playing in Europe, like Christian Pulisic, for example, do you try to keep him off the field so he doesn't get hurt, or do you try to keep him on the field so he stays in a rhythm playing against these big-time European players in Italy, in his case?
Yeah.
But do you think that gives anyone from the other side of the world any type of advantage there?
No, I'd say the best players are always the best players. So when you look at the best players in the game, they're going to be playing in the Champions League. Realistically, they're probably going to be playing in Europe. They're going to be used to playing against a lot of different styles, a lot of different personalities. Like, I think of Luis Diaz, he's Colombian. He's played in England at Liverpool. He's now playing in Germany at Bayern Munich. So he's playing the highest level of competition in different countries. So all these top players will play against each other. They'll know who the top players are, and they're going to be, Pulisic is going to be one of the top players in America. It doesn't matter whether he's playing in Italy or Germany or England. He's played in all three. He's going to be one of the top players in America, like a McKennie, like a Balogun. They're all playing Champions League football.
Right.
So I don't see that as an advantage. I think if you're raised in South America, if you're raised in the heat, if you're used to doing longer journeys and travel as a youth and coming up through the system, and you acclimatise quicker, I think it's going to be massive. If you're used to even dealing with some form of altitude, like most Americans will be used to maybe playing in through their youth days, they might go to Colorado for tournaments, so they're used to that. A lot of people coming from Europe and coming from maybe even Africa and places like that, they're not going to be used to all that travel and all that time difference and all that, where South American and American players will be. I don't think America as a squad maybe have the quality all round to be able to make it a huge advantage. Same with Mexico. But I think an Argentina and a Brazil that have a roster of world-class players and have that kind of background of acclimatization, have that background of heat, have that background of time changes, who have also now played in Europe at the highest level, I just think they're going to have a huge advantage when the game gets into the later stages, when it starts to really, mistakes start to play a part, fatigue starts to play a part. I just think they're going to have that extra little bit to maybe go and knock off some of the massive teams. But
because we saw it last year when the Club World Cup was hosted in America, we saw a lot of those European teams saying the heat here is ridiculous.
Yep.
That was the main thing that was brought up. And FIFA's done its thing saying there's going to be more hydration breaks during the game. We're going to do everything we can to take care of that. But that was the main topic of concern last summer during the Club World Cup, the heat in the United States.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, so you look at it, Chelsea won that. Chelsea are an English team. I bet Chelsea, and I don't know off the top of my head, I bet they had 4 or 5 Europeans starting in that game. João Pedro, who played a massive part in that game, is Brazilian. I'm almost certain it didn't affect him as much as it would have a lot of the other Chelsea players. And yeah, I remember the amount of people I listened to, especially on English radio soccer stations, talking about the tempo of the game and how quickly they fatigued and how slow the game ended up being. If you have guys that are more acclimatized, that are used to that can push the pace a little bit more into the later stages of those games with the heat that people have already complained about in the Club World Cup, like you say, I think it's just going to play a massive part in the overall results of the tournament, personally. But
all right, so one last thing I want to talk to you about. We're going to do this with everyone we get on this show. We've got the group stage results. The groups have been filled. They've been pooled. And some of these groups, we are still waiting on those qualification tournaments for those 4th spots. We're not going to worry about that today, but I do want to go through each group and talk about everyone that's officially qualified, and I want to see if you have an opinion on who's going to win that group.
okay.
So I've got them all right here. Group A, it's going to be Mexico, Korea Republic, and then South Africa. If you want to ask about those play-in teams, let me know, and I can read those off for you. But
no, I think the play-in teams are going to be, some of them might be really good. I know that there's a couple of European teams in there that have a shot, but I don't think they're going to make a massive difference to the teams that are already qualified. I think Mexico will win that group. I want to say quite comfortably, but I would put them top of that group for sure.
And then Group B, it's Canada, Switzerland, and Qatar are the 3 teams that are set.
Canada shocked everybody. They've got some players, guys like Alphonso Davies. Like I say, it's hard to put a parameter on how important home fans are.
Especially in an international tournament. Like we all know people will travel. We had the World Cup in Qatar last year, and everyone still traveled there.
That's right. And I think Switzerland are good, but I'd put Canada top of that group.
And then Group C, it's Brazil, Morocco, Scotland, and Haiti.
Brazil.
Comfortable.
Yeah, I think Morocco are actually really, really, really talented, and I think they'll go through that group, and I think they'll give everyone a really good game.
Yeah, we saw it in 2022. They made it all the way to the semis.
Yeah, and they've got a bit of magic about them, and they've got some really talented players, and probably used to the heat. But I think Brazil are going to be something else. And now they've got Carlo Ancelotti as their manager, who's a serial winner. I think they're going to run riot.
All right, so Group D, it's the United States, Australia, and Paraguay are the 3 teams that have qualified.
I do think the United States, again, with that home field, it could go both ways. Will that pressure crack them, or will it be an advantage?
And then Paraguay, that's another team that's used to that heat, so the U.S. don't have the advantage in that aspect.
No, I just think the U.S. will have home fans. They'll be acclimatized, and I think they have all round a better quality of player, and I think their manager, Mauricio Pochettino, again is a really high level coach. So I'd put USA top of that group.
Then Group E, it's Germany, Ecuador, and the Ivory Coast, and then Croatia.
I think Germany are going to win it. They've got some unbelievably talented players, but I think that's a really tough group. I think there's going to be a lot of competition in that group.
And then Group F, we've got the Netherlands, Japan, and then Tunisia are the three teams that have qualified. We're still waiting on that fourth one in that group.
Japan could be a dark horse in that. Japan could be a dark horse, but I do think Netherlands, with a couple of guys coming to the end, a couple of the guys in their prime, they travel in numbers, the Orange. So I think Netherlands will win that group.
And then, you've got a philosophy that came from Holland, total football, that just about everyone uses nowadays.
I love them.
That's always going to be a team you got to keep an eye on at the least.
Yeah.
So Group G, Group G, Belgium, Iran, Egypt, and New Zealand. Egypt's always a team you kind of got to keep a little bit of an eye on with Mo Salah there, but...
they just don't have the all-round quality that a Belgium would have. Belgium are going to be used to major tournaments. I think Belgium should win that group pretty comfortably.
All right, and then moving on to Group H, Spain, Uruguay, Saudi Arabia, and then Cabo Verde. Spain all the way.
Easy. I think Spain are going to... If there's any European team that are going to challenge, Spain are absolutely incredible. I mean, just recently in the Euros, they played England in the final. They've got just... You want to talk about total football, the way they play, they're fast, they're technical, they're unbelievable. They've got leaders, they've got Lamine Yamal and players like that on the wings, and I think they're minimum semi-finalists, probably finalists, and I think they could potentially be the team that knock off a Brazil or an Argentina in a final as well.
And then moving on to Group I, this is my favorite group in terms of just like we're going to see some good soccer here. France, Senegal, and Norway, and we're still waiting on that fourth team, but that France-Norway matchup is the one I've kind of told people. I'm like, I want to say if there's a team that knocks France off in that group, it's Norway. You always got to keep an eye on a guy like Erling Haaland, and then right under that, the attacking midfield spot, Martin Odegaard's still going to be there. You've got some key players on that side, but what's your take on that?
I think France might have the best squad in all of world football in terms of talent.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes that doesn't lead to results. I think Norway, like you say, Haaland can win a game by himself if he has one of his games. They've got that. They've actually been playing a two up front a lot with Alex Sørloth that plays at Atletico Madrid. He's a massive target as well. I do think France will do it. And again, I think if they hadn't just recently been in World Cup finals, won a lot of tournaments, Kylian Mbappe, players like that, maybe they could get knocked off. I just think that they've got the quality and the experience.
Right. Won it in 2018, made it all the way to the end in 2022.
That's right.
They've been there before.
Yeah, and Mbappe scored hat-tricks in a World Cup final. So, I mean, they've just got... I think they're going to have too much. I think France will win it, but it's a good group.
And then moving on to Group J, it's Argentina, Austria, Algeria, and Jordan. And I think we all know who the favorite in that group is. It's probably Argentina. So in this one, I'll ask you who that second team is, you think? Because that's where the playing is going to be interesting in that group.
Algeria, probably. I think, yeah. Like you say, I think I'm very excited. I think this could be Messi's last World Cup.
We all thought the last one was going to be his last World Cup. Same thing with Ronaldo now.
And
but
he's just still ripping up the MLS, and I can't wait to... Ronaldo and Messi, this is almost without a shadow of a doubt in terms of actually starting and playing. I think it'll be their last World Cup. But I can't wait to watch that for sure.
And then moving on to Group K, we were talking about Ronaldo a little bit. This is his group: Portugal, Colombia, and then Uzbekistan. And then that's another one of those. This is the last group that is waiting on that last play-in seed. This isn't a UEFA one. It's one of those intercontinental ones, though. So this is the last of the last that are still fighting for it.
Portugal, ridiculously talented again on paper. Could beat anyone in the world quite comfortably. Roberto Martinez is an unbelievable manager. He's also managed Belgium. He knows the difference in levels. They are always playing against the best teams in the Nations League. They have guys that are winning Champions League in the midfield, in Vitinha and João Neves. They've got Bruno Fernandes, who's statistically just broken Manchester United's assist record. They've got pace, they've got power, they've got Champions League winners at fullback in Nuno Mendes. So I think they're going to absolutely run riot in that group.
And then the last group we have, Group L, it's England, Croatia, Panama, and then Ghana.
Obviously, England quite comfortably are going to walk that group. And
no bias whatsoever.
No bias, no, it's just obvious. But no, I say that, I really do think they're going to be challenged. I think Croatia have knocked England out of major tournaments fairly recently. England played Senegal in a friendly and lost 4-1 fairly recently under Thomas Tuchel as the manager. I'm very interested to see a German manager managing England in a World Cup because there's so much speculation about it.
Oh, I can imagine.
He's been very, very outspoken in who he picks and how he picks them, and very honest. And he's obviously a Champions League winning manager, so it's going to be a massive test for him.
And then the one last thing I want to ask you before we close this one off, is football coming home this year?
Yes, obviously.
This is the year?
Hopefully.
This is the year.
Hopefully.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for joining us here on the 26 Touchline. Again, we're going to try to get at least a few more of these going off in the near future, and then we'll see what happens as we get closer and closer to the World Cup, which kicks off in about 79 days. Again, you can see us here on YouTube, or you can see us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. Don't know when the next one's going to come out, but it should be in the near future. Until then, for Jake Simpson, this is Jacob Grobelby, and you're listening to the 26 Touchline.